first tonight, the serious side of Facebook, YouTube, and other new internet technologies. Joining us is attorney Michael Hendler of Adelberg, Rudow, Dorf Hendler, LLC. Thank you very much for being here.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
We wanted to talk at first about this case of the angry wife video that was posted on YouTube. This is a New York couple, and trouble was brewing, and then it turned into this video.
Yeah, I believe she was married to a Broadway producer, and they were ready to go to court for their divorce. A prenuptial was involved, and she was trying to get out of the prenuptial and trying to get more money. And lo and behold, there was this rant on YouTube. I mean, she just went off at...
So it was all the dirty laundry she could possibly air.
Dirty, yes.
She aired it worldwide on YouTube. And how did this work as a legal strategy?
Not well.
Yeah.
Not well at all. The judge was critical of her use of YouTube, upheld the prenuptial, and the rest was history. It really blew up.
You specialize in family law cases.
Well, my area of concentration, yes.
Okay. And I guess we're more familiar. We think about the John Edwards case where he was chased around this hotel by reporters for the National Enquirer. That's sort of old school stuff compared to what you see now with electronic surveillance.
Originally, I guess it started out with a cell phone. People would make their telephone calls on the cell phone, not realize that the bill had the telephone number where they were making the call. The spouse would intercept the bill and all of a sudden would see a repeat of telephone numbers and suddenly would find out that there was another man or woman involved. That's turned into virtually a cottage industry where emails, people are communicating by emails. Everybody communicates by emails. Text messaging. And the communication between a married spouse and a paramour taking place over email, taking place over text messaging, giving details as to perhaps what happened the evening before, setting plans for another meeting later on, and folks discovering these emails.
Somebody said, put it very succinctly, the internet is forever. That anything you put up on one of these sites or send an email that you think may be a temporary thing, it's likely to be archived somewhere.
We family lawyers have learned that very well, that by hitting delete from your email does not necessarily delete it forever. We have situations where the hard drive can be what they call cloned. If you have access to the person's hard drive, and you have legal access to the person's hard drive, may I add, there are organizations, there are businesses that can clone it. They can pull out all the deleted emails, and you're perhaps not as safe and secure in your communication as you thought you'd be.
What makes access to somebody's hard drive legal versus illegal? You can't break in now, obviously.
Exactly. If the computer is owned, say, by a business, there may be some question as to whether the spouse can have access to it. But many of these situations are the home computer. It's just he or she will access the password, or will find what's called spyware, which can be loaded on a computer, and it records the keystrokes and reveals not only the passwords but also the emails that were sent.
So what do you do if you have a client in a case that's headed for divorce, and there's a suspicion of wrongdoing on the other side? Is that where private investigators come in?
Private investigators can come in, certainly, for surveillance. Private investigators, or these technical companies.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Is there like a modern-day equivalent of the old gumshoe?
Oh, yeah,
detective?
absolutely, absolutely. There's a whole, I'm telling you, there's a whole cottage industry of technical people who can pull out the information off of these hard drives.
Now, people think that texting is probably the least technologically advanced form of communication. It's not Facebook or there's no pictures involved. It's just typing out a few letters, and that seems to be more temporary.
Except that there's a monthly bill. And that monthly bill, if accessed by the other person, can tell where the telephone calls were. There are also, I believe you can access the telephone account depending on what company they're with, and find out where the calls were made. Again, there are laws. There are wiretap laws, there are some federal laws, there are some state laws. And you always have to caution your client to be very, very careful not to be violating those laws if they are suspicious. One of the easiest things to do is just wait for the mail to come in. Even the Easy Pass can be used if he or she says they went in one direction, and you get the monthly Easy Pass bill and you find out that they went in another direction, they went somewhere else. That can create a suspicion.
Let me broaden this out a little bit from the family law context to other situations where, because we don't want to give anybody advice on doing something wrong, but in cases where the internet or Facebook or something has caused somebody legal trouble for other reasons, what kind of general advice would you give somebody on their high-tech dealings?
Well, the first thing I would tell a client if they were coming to me is certainly with regard to communication between lawyer and client, I will instruct my client to open up his or her own secure email account.
Is there such thing as a secure email account?
Well, at least that the other spouse doesn't have access to.
That's what you mean?
That's right. The other advice that I give the person is that assume that someone else is going to be reading that email. Even though we hope it's secure, assume that somebody else is going to be reading it, and just make sure that there's nothing incriminating that's in there. And I always tell people, before you hit send, just think one more time.
And that goes for postings on Facebook as well.
Well, that's a whole nother issue. When you find out that the spouse has their own site on Facebook or on YouTube or Match.com, where they want to date.
Yeah, that might not be a good idea. All right, Attorney Michael Hendler, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate it.